In the deep black of space, a fleet of alien ships floated like silent shadows, each vessel built for speed and precision, each crew trained for one purpose, only the art of assassination. These were not warriors who marched openly to battle. These were killers in the dark, chosen from birth to strike unseen and leave no trace. They were feared across 100 star systems, whispered about in hushed tones among the many races who had learned the price of crossing them. Now their eyes turned toward a new target, a young and rising race called humans. To the aliens, humanity was fragile, too fragile to stand among the greater powers of the galaxy, their bodies weak, their lifespans short, their technology crude, compared to the old empires. Yet humans had something dangerous. They spread fast, they adapted fast, and in every corner of space where they appeared, they survived and thrived. The alien assassins gathered in a dark chamber, lit only by the glow of data screens, showing human anatomy. The images rotated slowly, hearts, lungs, kidneys, brains, every organ labeled, every weakness marked. The alien leader, a tall figure with silver eyes and blades on his arms, spoke with quiet certainty. "We know their secrets." He said, "We know where to strike. One cut, one poison, one blade, and they fall like paper. They are fragile creatures, pretending to be strong, and soon the galaxy will see how easy it is to break them." The assassins leaned closer, studying every detail of the human body, their long fingers traced across the glowing diagrams. "Here is the heart," they whispered, "strike here, and the human dies. Here is the brain, shatter it, and they fall. Here is the lung, pierce it, and they suffocate." They listed every organ, every weakness. They saw no challenge, only prey waiting to be harvested. The first mission was prepared quickly. A single human target chosen, a leader of soldiers, one who inspired his people to stand against alien power. The assassins believed that by cutting down leaders, they would cut down the courage of the race. They believed humans would collapse if their figureheads were destroyed. So one assassin was chosen, silent and swift, armed with a blade dipped in venom. The alien slipped into the human city under cover of night. The city itself glowed with lights. Tall towers rose against the dark sky. Human guards patrolled the streets, but none saw the shadow moving among them. None heard the silent steps across the rooftops. None felt the eyes that watched from above. The assassin moved with the patience of a predator, waiting for the perfect moment. The target was inside a hall, speaking with others, planning defense strategies. The alien waited until the leader left the hall, walked alone through a corridor, and then struck. The blade flashed like lightning, piercing the body of the human leader. The venom entered quickly, burning through blood. The assassin pulled back, watching with cold certainty. This was the end. The human staggered, fell to one knee, hand pressed against his side, eyes wide with pain. The alien waited for the breath to stop, waited for the heart to slow, waited for the life to fade. This was how it always happened. One strike, one death, no exceptions. But something was wrong. The human did not fall fully. He stood again, his face pale, sweat running down his skin, but his eyes still alive, his hands gripping the wound. He called for help, and others rushed to him, but he did not collapse. He did not die. The venom should have killed him. The blade should have ended him. The alien assassin felt confusion for the first time in years. Doctors came quickly, humans in white coats who carried strange tools. They examined the leader, spoke calmly, gave orders, and moved him to safety. The alien assassin fled into the shadows, vanishing before capture, but the questions burned inside his mind. How had the human lived? No one survived such a wound. No one survived that venom. No one survived the loss of an organ. Back in the alien fleet, the assassin gave his report. The others listened in silence, their silver eyes narrowing, their claws tapping against the table. "Impossible," one said. "No one survived such an attack." "Are you certain?" another asked. "Was the strike clean? Was the poison true?" The assassin swore. "It was perfect, perfect. As always, the human should be dead, but he is not." The alien leader leaned back in his chair, thinking, his blades scratching the metal surface of the table. Perhaps this was chance, perhaps the human was lucky, but we do not believe in luck. We believe in weakness, and weakness always breaks. Maybe we did not strike deep enough. Maybe their bodies are stranger than they look. We must try again. The assassins prepared another mission, but the seed of doubt had been planted. If one human could live through a wound that should kill him, then what else was hidden inside this race? What secrets were buried in their flesh? As the human leader lay in a bed, recovering, his people gathered around him, his soldiers, his friends, his doctors. They expected fear. They expected despair. Instead, they saw determination. The wound was bad, but he was alive. His voice was weak, but steady. He said to them, "They think we are fragile. They think we are weak. They think one cut is enough to kill us. Let them believe it for a while longer, and then we will show them who we truly are." The human doctors whispered among themselves, amazed by the survival of their patient. The blade had destroyed one of his kidneys, but still he lived, his other kidney strong enough to keep him alive. They knew this truth. While humans could survive without many parts, they could lose one lung and still breathe. They could lose one kidney and still live. They could lose parts of their stomach, their liver, their intestines, and still walk and fight. Their bodies built with backups. Redundancies, ways to endure what should not be endured. The alien assassins did not know this. They thought one wound, one strike, one organ would end a human life. They did not understand the stubborn design of human flesh, the strange gift of survival written deep in their evolution. And so the first attempt failed, and the assassins whispered in disbelief, and the humans whispered in pride. The war between them had only just begun, and already the galaxy was about to learn a terrible truth. Humans are not easy prey, and when death comes close, they do not surrender, they rise. The alien assassins sat in silence aboard their hidden vessel, drifting on the edge of human space, each one replaying the failure in their mind. The thought that a single human had survived what should have been a perfect kill felt like a shadow spreading through the entire crew. They had lived by one rule for centuries: strike true, and the target always falls, but now that rule trembled. The leader of the assassins stood before them, his silver eyes glowing faintly against the dim light. He spoke with a voice that was calm, yet sharp like a blade sliding across stone. "One mistake is an accident," he said. "Two mistakes is a weakness, and weakness is death. We will not allow weakness. So we will test again, we will strike again, and if humans can survive one wound, then let us see how many they can survive before they finally fall." Plans were drawn, targets chosen, this time not a single leader, but several human soldiers, men and women known for their courage, warriors who guarded the edges of their world. The assassins whispered among themselves as they studied the files. These ones train their bodies every day. These ones are strong for humans, but strength means nothing. When organs fail, no creature survives without the parts that give them life. Night fell over a human outpost on the frontier, a small base with walls of steel and guards posted at every corner. Inside, soldiers laughed, shared food, and planned the next patrol. None of them knew shadows had already entered their camp, moving across the sand like smoke. The assassins slipped past sensors, climbed over walls, and walked between guards unseen, each one carrying blades filled with poison, each one ready to prove the failure before was only chance. The first strike came quickly. A soldier standing watch near the tower felt the sting of a blade between his ribs. He gasped, fell to the ground, clutching his side. His comrades rushed to him, expecting the worst. His breath grew shallow, his body shook, and everyone thought he was gone. But within minutes, he opened his eyes again, coughing and weak, yet still alive. The poison should have ended him. The blade should have ended him, yet his chest still rose and fell. Another assassin attacked a second soldier, cutting across the side where the lung rested. Blood spilled. The soldier collapsed. The assassins pulled back, waiting for the silence of death. But again the soldier moved again. He gasped again. He spoke, struggling, yet living. He held his wound, and with help from his friends, he stood again, his eyes fierce, even as pain consumed him. More attacks followed, more strikes aimed at hearts, lungs, kidneys, even stomachs. Humans fell, but none stayed down. They bled, they cried, they suffered, yet they kept breathing, kept standing. Some even raised their weapons, firing at shadows, forcing the assassins to retreat faster than planned. When the fight ended, the base was in chaos. Soldiers wounded, doctors rushing from bed to bed. Yet one by one, each soldier clung to life. Some lost too much blood and slipped away, but most remained, their bodies refusing to surrender, their organs failing, yet their hearts still beating. The assassins had never seen such things before. Back aboard the alien vessel, the assassins argued, their voices sharp and uncertain. One said, "This is not natural. No species can live like this." Another said, "Maybe they're not alive at all. Maybe they're machines wrapped in flesh. Maybe they're cursed creatures built for war." The leader raised his claw to silence them and spoke, "We underestimated them. Their bodies are not like ours. They do not need everything to live. This changes nothing. It only means we must change our methods." But his words carried less certainty than before, and the assassins knew it. Meanwhile, the human doctors worked through the night, their hands stained with blood, their faces tired, yet determined. They spoke to one another with grim voices. These wounds should be fatal, they said, yet they're alive. One soldier has only one kidney left yet. He stands, another breathes with one lung. Yet he laughs, another has lost part of his stomach. Yet he eats soup and smiles. Our bodies are strange gifts, born from hardship, born from struggle. Our kind has always survived through loss. The soldiers themselves began to whisper, not in fear, but in pride. They spoke of how the assassins came in the night with blades sharp enough to kill any creature, and yet the humans rose again. They spoke of how fragile they were said to be, and yet their blood carried something no alien understood. They spoke of survival. News spread quickly across the ranks, stories of men and women who kept fighting even after their bodies should have given up. The tales grew larger with every telling. Some said a soldier kept firing after losing half his chest. Others said one walked miles with no stomach, still standing until rescue arrived. Truth and legend mixed, but the meaning was the same. Humans could not be killed so easily. The alien assassins listened too, for even in silence, they could not escape the rumors. Their spies carried reports of soldiers who would not die, leaders who stood after poison organs removed, and still living. The assassins felt something they had not felt in a long time. Not anger, not shame, but fear. The leader of the assassins walked alone through the corridors of the ship, his claws dragging across the metal walls, his mind replaying every strike, every wound, every failure. He thought of the silvered diagrams of human anatomy that promised weakness, and he thought of how those weaknesses had turned into lies. He whispered to himself, no creature is unkillable, everything can die. And yet, when he spoke, the words felt hollow. In a human camp, the wounded soldiers sat together around a fire, bandaged and scarred, but smiling. They laughed about the night, shared stories of their pain. As if it were a joke, one soldier raised his mug of water and said, let them come again. Let them try to cut us. Let them try to poison us. Let them try to end us, because we will not fall so easily. His comrades cheered, and the sound carried across the base loud enough for the stars themselves to hear. The assassins knew this was only the beginning. If they could not end humans with blades and poison, they would need new plans. But deep inside, each assassin wondered if any plan would be enough, because when prey refuses to die, it is no longer prey. It becomes the hunter, and perhaps the assassins themselves were now the hunted. The alien assassins gathered once again in their hidden chamber, their faces hard, their eyes sharp, their claws restless. On the table, the room was filled with a heavy silence, the kind that comes when belief is shaken, the kind that comes when killers begin to doubt themselves. The leader looked at them, all his silver eyes burning like cold fire, and he spoke with slow, measured words. We struck once and failed. We struck twice and failed again. If this continues, our reputation will shatter across the galaxy. We cannot allow this race to stand against us. He pointed toward the star map where human worlds glowed in soft light. They expand faster than any other. He said they fight harder than their size should allow, and if their bodies can endure such wounds, then every plan we made must be remade. The assassins shifted uncomfortably. They had never needed to change their ways before, never needed to question their blades, their poisons, their shadows. But now the enemy was different. One assassin leaned forward, his voice low. Let us strike many at once, he said. Not one leader, not one soldier, but whole squads. Let us rain fear on them. If we cut enough, they must fall. Even creatures like these cannot resist death. Forever. The others nodded, slowly agreeing with his plan. The leader allowed a faint smile. Then it is decided. We strike not in silence this time, but with storm. Far across the stars, human soldiers trained on barren ground under a red sun. They marched, they shouted, they lifted weapons in unison. They believed they were preparing for battle on the frontier. None of them knew death was already on its way, shadows crossing the sky, silent craft entering the atmosphere unseen. Night came quickly, the red sun sinking low, leaving only darkness across the camp. The humans gathered around fires, laughing, sharing food and stories of old wars. Some spoke proudly of the attack they had survived on the other outpost. Others teased them, saying perhaps the assassins were not as dangerous as the stories claimed. But deep in their hearts, each soldier wondered when the killers would come again. The answer came with no warning. Shapes fell from the sky, fast as lightning blades flashing with cold poison. Soldiers cried out as shadows cut across the camp tents, ripped apart guards, fell to the ground, blood spreading on the dirt. The assassins struck with fury, faster and harder. than before, no longer one or two blades, but many, each assassin determined to prove that humans could bleed like any other race. Yet even as the ground filled with cries and pain, something strange happened. The humans fought back, not with panic, but with fury. Wounded men and women rose from the ground, gripping weapons with hands slick with blood. Soldiers with broken ribs kept firing. Soldiers with pierced lungs kept shouting orders. One felt his knees coughing blood. Yet when an assassin came close, he rose again, swinging his blade with a roar, forcing the killer to retreat. The assassins saw wounds that should end life, and yet the humans kept moving. One soldier lost an eye, yet fired more accurately than before. Another had a blade pass through his side. Yet he grabbed the assassin by the arm and dragged him into the fire, both screaming until the assassin burned away. The camp was chaos, but not collapse, it was defiance. The leader of the assassins watched from above, perched on a ridge, his eyes wide for the first time, not in anger, but in disbelief. He whispered to himself, how can they still stand? How can they still fight? Their bodies are broken, yet they move like beasts, unchained. He saw humans with bandages already soaked in blood, still shouting orders. Saw medics dragging the fallen back, while firing pistols with their free hands. Saw young soldiers who should have fled instead, charging into the shadows with knives and fists. By dawn, the ground was covered in ash smoke and blood. The assassins pulled back, vanishing into the hills, leaving behind more bodies than they expected. Not only humans, but assassins too, something that had not happened in years. They were killers of legends, yet now they had lost their own in battle against prey that refused to fall. The human camp mourned, but also stood proud. The wounded sat together, their bodies broken, yet their spirits unshaken. They spoke of how many assassins had died that night, how many had fled in fear, how many had seen the truth that humans would not bow to blades or poison. The youngest soldier said aloud, if this is how they fight, then we are not prey, we are the hunters now. And his comrades roared with approval. Back aboard the alien vessel, silence ruled. Once more the assassins stared at each other, none daring to speak. First, finally, one broke the silence, his voice trembling. This is wrong. This race should not exist like this. We cut them, we poison them, we break their bodies, and yet they rise again. Are they demons? Are they monsters? The leader slammed his claw against the table and hissed enough. They are flesh, they are blood, they are not beyond death. But even as he said the words, doubt crept into his voice. The assassins debated for hours. Some argued they must bring stronger poison. Others argued they must strike faster, strike deeper, tear out hearts and brains at once. But another voice, softer but sharper than all the rest, whispered, maybe it is not their flesh we should fear. Maybe it is their will, for even broken bodies still rise. When the will refuses to die, the chamber fell quiet again, for no one could deny the truth in those words. On the human world, the survivors prepared again, rebuilding their camps, strengthening their walls, burying their dead with honor. But with each grave dug, their anger grew, their unity sharpened, and their voices grew louder. They told stories of the night, how one soldier fought with no kidney, how another breathed with one lung, how another stood with a pierced stomach. Their stories spread like fire across other camps, across other worlds. Soon every human soldier knew that even the assassins could bleed. And even the assassins could fail. The assassins heard these stories too, whispered across the stars. And for the first time in their long history, killers who feared nothing began to feel the weight of fear pressing against their hearts. For how do you fight an enemy who refuses to stay down? How do you end a race that survives what should never be survived? The sun rose over the wounded camp, painting the ground in red light that mixed with the darker red already spilled across the soil. The humans moved among the wreckage, carrying the injured, dragging away the bodies of friends and comrades, their faces hard, their eyes filled not only with grief, but with fire. They had been hunted, they had been cut, they had been poisoned, yet they were still standing, and now a single thought spread among them like lightning: enough of waiting, enough of hiding, enough of being prey. The commanders gathered in the center of the camp. Maps spread across a table, weapons stacked nearby. Soldiers stood around listening as voices rose. One commander said, the assassins believe we are weak. They strike from shadows, thinking fear will break us. But every strike makes us stronger. Every wound teaches us more. Every night they try to end us, and every dawn we rise again. Another commander struck his hand against the table, saying, no more defense. We must take the fight to them if they want death. Let us show them how humans give it. The plan was bold, and dangerous scouts had tracked faint signs of alien movement across the hills, trails left by assassins retreating after their last attack, broken branches, footprints half hidden by sand, traces of blood. Where even they had fallen, the humans followed the signs, carefully, their eyes sharp, their weapons ready, moving not as prey, but as hunters, each step filled with quiet rage. The assassins, meanwhile, gathered in their hidden vessel deep beneath rock and shadow. They sharpened blades, mixed new poisons, argued over the failures, and whispered their doubts. The leader walked among them, speaking with sharp command. We have faced strong prey. Before we have faced beasts that refuse to fall, but never once have we failed in the end. Remember who we are. We are death in the dark. We are the end of all who stand against us. Yet even as he spoke, some assassins turned away, their minds heavy with fear, for they remembered the eyes of humans who fought with torn lungs and shattered ribs, and still rose to strike. Night fell again. The assassins prepared another attack, believing they would finally restore their name. But as they moved through the valleys toward the human camp, something was wrong. The shadows moved differently. The silence around them felt heavy, not with weakness, but with waiting. For hidden among the rocks, the humans were already there, their rifles steady, their traps set, their hearts pounding with rage. They had become the shadow hunters, and when the assassins entered the valley, the humans struck. Gunfire roared through the dark, explosions lit the night. Soldiers shouted with voices that carried strength and fury. The assassins, who were used to striking unseen, were now caught in open fire. Many fell before they even reached their targets. Others charged forward, only to meet humans who no longer fought only for survival, but for revenge. Wounded soldiers joined the fight, bandages soaked with blood, yet rifles held steady, their eyes burning bright. They fired, they stabbed, they fought like creatures who refused to die. The assassins reeled back, stunned by the ferocity. They had never faced prey that set traps, prey that waited in ambush, prey that smiled as blades cut into them, only to rise again stronger. One assassin struck a soldier across the chest, only for the soldier to grab him by the throat, dragging him down as blood poured. Yet the soldier laughed before his final breath, and others came to finish the fight. The valley became a storm of chaos, humans shouting, aliens screaming, fire burning across the rocks, until smoke rose to the sky like a dark banner. The leader of the assassins tried to rally his killers, his silver eyes blazing as he cut through soldiers with speed and skill unmatched. Yet even he felt the weight of this battle. For every human that fell, two more took their place, and none surrendered. One soldier, missing an arm, charged at him with a blade in the other hand. Another, with half his face burned still, threw grenades into the rocks. The leader hissed in frustration, striking them down. But each moment, he felt his own certainty crumble. By dawn, the valley was silent, except for the voices of humans standing among the fallen. Many soldiers lay wounded, but alive, dragging themselves together, raising their weapons in victory. The assassins had retreated again, leaving behind more bodies than ever before. Humans walked among the corpses of their enemies, whispering to one another that the hunters had become the hunted, that the shadows were no longer feared but broken. In the human camp, the news spread like fire. They had not only survived another attack, they had struck back and won. For the first time, the assassins had lost ground against them. Soldiers lifted their voices in song, rough, broken, yet strong, a sound that carried across the battlefield, echoing into the sky. They sang not to forget their pain, but to show the galaxy that they were not weak, that they would not fall, that no blade, no poison, no shadow could silence them. Back on the alien vessel, silence weighed heavier than ever. Assassins cleaned their blades without speaking, their eyes dark with fear. The leader sat alone, his claws shaking against the table, his mind filled with images of humans rising again and again. He whispered, their only flesh, their only blood, they must be able to die. But the words no longer carried power, no longer carried truth. The assassins knew what they had seen and what they feared to admit. These humans were different, and if they could not be killed easily, then the assassins were facing not prey, but rivals. The humans, meanwhile, prepared for more. They trained harder, they strengthened their weapons, they rebuilt their walls. But now they also carried a new fire in their hearts. They had fought death in the dark and survived. They had hunted the hunters and won. And every soldier, every doctor, every leader knew the truth. The assassins would return. They would try again. They would not stop until one side was broken. But humanity had already chosen they would never be the side that breaks. And so the war turned the galaxy, watching as whispers spread across systems that the assassins who never failed had been stopped by a race no one believed in, a race called fragile, a race called weak, a race that now stood taller than ever and prepared to show the stars that fragility was an illusion and survival was their true power. The alien vessel drifted in the dark void of space, far from the human worlds, its hulls quiet, its shadows long. The assassins sat in their chamber, weapons laid aside, faces hidden behind fear for the first time, their voices low, as if even sound itself might betray weakness. They had been proud killers, legends whispered across 100 systems. Yet now whispers followed them, not of fear, but of failure. The leader sat at the head of the table, silver eyes burning, but his claws restless against the surface. He looked at each assassin and spoke in a voice colder than the void. We have fought many races across the stars. We have ended kings and generals, beasts and warriors. Yet now we bleed at the hands of creatures who should not stand before us, who should have fallen long ago. What do we call them? Prey, enemies, monsters. Tell me what they are. Silence followed. None wished to answer. Then one assassin finally raised his head, eyes dark with confusion. I struck one through the chest, and he rose again. I poisoned another, and still she lived. I've seen them walk with broken ribs, fight with pierced lungs. I cannot explain this. They're not like us. They're not like any I have known. Another assassin added, perhaps they are not meant to live. Perhaps they were made by something greater, built to endure, built to suffer without end. The leader hissed, shaking his head, nonsense. They are flesh and bone, nothing more. But the words rang hollow, even in his own ears. He remembered the valley. He remembered the humans who kept coming again and again, eyes glowing not with pain, but with rage. He remembered how even the dying clung to their weapons, refusing to surrender, and he wondered in secret if perhaps his killers spoke the truth. Meanwhile, across the human camp, survivors gathered their wounds, wrapped their bodies tired, yet their spirits high. They shared stories around fires, stories of how comrades lived after losing parts of themselves. One soldier lifted his shirt, showing a scar where a kidney had once been, and said, "Yet here I stand." Another raised her bandaged chest, saying, "One lung gone, and still I breathe." Another laughed with half his stomach missing, and said, "Even this cannot stop me." Their laughter carried strength. Their pain carried pride, and their voices rose together like thunder in the night. The assassins heard of these stories through spies, and each tale spread like poison among them. But unlike their own venom, this poison ate away at their certainty. One whispered, "I have heard of a man who fought for hours with no stomach." Another spoke of a woman who breathed with half a lung, still killing 3 assassins before falling. Another told of a leader who survived venom that should kill a beast 10 times his size. These cannot be lies. Too many stories, too many truths. The leader stood again, slamming his claw down. "We will not fall to stories. We are killers, not children afraid of tales in the dark." Yet even as he spoke, he felt the unease in the room. His killers no longer looked like shadows of death. They looked like shadows of fear, doubt etched into their movements, into their silence. He knew if this fear grew, they would collapse before striking again. Far away on Earth, human leaders spoke together in great halls, voices echoing against stone and steel. They knew the assassins would return. They knew the shadows had not given up yet. They also knew something else. For the first time in history, the assassins bled. And when predators bleed, prey becomes bold. Generals spoke of how to push further, how to spread the truth across the stars, how to show every race that humans were not fragile, not weak, not prey, but survivors of the impossible. One general said, "Let them whisper our stories. Let the assassins hear them. Let fear grow in their hearts." The alien assassins in their chamber argued again. Some demanded stronger weapons. Some demanded fire that would burn whole cities. Some demanded blades that cut deeper than before. But one assassin, quiet and pale, spoke words that silenced them all. "Perhaps it does not matter what we carry. Perhaps nothing matters, for if they refuse to die, if they refuse to surrender, then no weapon will break them." The chamber froze, each assassin feeling the truth in those words. The leader glared at him, silver eyes sharp enough to cut. Yet even he felt the sting of that thought. He whispered to himself, what if he is right? What if nothing ends them? And the thought echoed in his skull until it became a storm. On the frontier, human soldiers sharpened their blades, cleaned their rifles, repaired their armor. They did so with laughter, with songs, with pride, for every scar was a mark of survival, every missing piece of flesh a badge of honor. They no longer hid their wounds, they showed them as proof, as warning, as truth to themselves, and to the stars they marched, not as prey, but as hunters, each step carrying the weight of defiance. In the alien vessel, the assassins trained in silence, yet their blades felt heavier, their movements slower. Shadows that once flowed like water now stumbled like broken rivers. They had seen prey bleed and fall, they had seen prey beg for mercy, but humans did neither. They bled and fought, they fell and rose, they begged for nothing except another chance to strike. The assassins looked at their claws and wondered if their era had ended, if their legend was finished. The leader paced his chamber alone, silver eyes reflecting against the steel walls. He remembered how other races fell with one strike. He remembered the fear that once followed his killers across the stars. But now he remembered something else: human eyes staring through pain, human voices shouting through blood, human hands gripping blades. Even as their hearts slowed, he whispered again to himself, they should not live yet. They should not rise, yet they do. What are they? Fear spread, not only among assassins, but across their empire. Allies whispered, enemies listened. Some races, once afraid of the killers, began to doubt, began to ask if the assassins were only myth, if their power was fading. For if humans could stand against them, what stopped others from doing the same? The assassins did not only face humans now, they faced the weight of their own crumbling legend. And in the silence of that thought, one assassin spoke the words none dared to say aloud: if humans cannot be killed, then perhaps the galaxy will belong to them and not to us. The captured assassin sat inside a steel room on a human warship, chains wrapped tight around his arms, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. He had been trained never to speak, never to break. Yet now he sat in silence, listening to the sounds beyond the walls: soldiers, walking doctors, moving engines, humming a sound that felt alive and endless. The door opened, and a human entered, not a soldier, but a doctor. Her hands steady, her eyes calm. She looked at him as if he were not a monster, but only another living being. She spoke softly, your people do not understand us. You think we are weak, you think we break when struck, but you are wrong. The assassin hissed, showing his sharp teeth. You should be dead, you should all be dead. I have cut hearts, I have crushed lungs, I have poisoned blood, and yet you stand, you rise again, and again. What are you? The doctor smiled gently. We are human, and humans are different from what you believe. She pulled a chair and sat across from him, her voice calm but filled with strength. She began to explain, our bodies are not perfect, but they are built with more than one way to live. You think if one organ is gone, the body dies. But our bodies are made with backups, redundancies, as you might call them. You remove a kidney, and the other works. You cut a lung, and the other breathes. You wound the stomach and other parts carry the task. We're not easy to end, because nature shaped us through hardship. The assassin narrowed his eyes, confusion and anger mixed. You should not live with such wounds. No creature should walk with half its body gone. Yet, I have seen it with my eyes. I saw soldiers fight. After losing parts that keep us alive, I thought it was lies. But it is truth. The doctor nodded. It is truth. And more than flesh, it is spirit we endure. Because we refuse to surrender. Because pain is not enough to silence us. Because death must fight for every breath it takes from us. Far away, in another camp, soldiers told stories around fires, voices proud and loud. They spoke of friends who survived the impossible. One soldier said, I lost my kidney, yet I live. Another said, I lost half my liver, yet I fight. Another raised his chest, showing scars, and said, my heart was cut, but still it beats. Their comrades cheered, and their voices carried into the night a sound of defiance that spread across every human world. The assassin inside the cell lowered his head, his thoughts, heavy shadows filling his mind. He remembered training that taught him prey always fell. He remembered lessons that said fear breaks all. Yet humans had no fear, or if they had it, they buried it beneath something stronger. He whispered to himself, you are cursed beings built only to suffer. The doctor shook her head. No, we are blessed beings built to survive suffering. There is a difference, and that difference is why we still stand. Back on the alien vessel, the assassins argued again. Some demanded fire to burn entire cities. Some demanded weapons that shatter planets. Some demanded abandoning the war. But in every voiced out lingered their blades, felt less sharp, their poisons less certain. For what use is a weapon When the enemy refuses to fall, the leader listened, but said little, his silver eyes staring out into the void, remembering faces of humans who would not die. In the human halls, leaders gathered with soldiers and doctors, speaking together of what came next. One general said, "We have shown we can survive their blades now. We must show them we can end their terror." Another doctor said, "We must spread the truth across the stars, that humans endure, that humans live, that humans fight, even with broken bodies. Let every race know we are not weak, and let fear grow in the hearts of the assassins." The captured assassin was moved to another chamber. Larger, brighter soldiers guarded the doors, yet the doctor remained with him. She asked, "Tell me, why do you hunt us? Why do you kill in shadows?" The assassin answered, "Because we always could, because no race stood against us, because no one ever lived to defy us, until now." His voice cracked. "Until you humans, until you're kind." She leaned forward, her voice calm, but sharp. "Then hear this. You have seen the truth. You have seen our wounds. You have seen our scars. And still we live. We are not fragile. We are not prey. We are not shadows hiding from fear. We are the storm that rises when death comes close. And we are the fire that burns until nothing remains." The assassin trembled for the first time, his claws shaking, his voice weak. He whispered, "Then we cannot kill you. We cannot win against you." The doctor shook her head slowly. "Anyone can die, even humans, but killing us takes more than blades, more than poison. It takes breaking our will, and that you will never do." The news of the captured assassin spread across the stars. Humans sent messages to other worlds, showing proof of survival, showing proof of scars. They spoke openly of what they endured, and other races listened, some in awe, some in fear, some in hope. The legend of the assassins began to crumble piece by piece as truth replaced whispers. Prey no longer trembled. Prey began to believe perhaps the assassins could be defeated. On their vessel, the assassins heard this news, and their silence deepened. One whispered, "We were feared once, but now we are doubted." Another whispered, "If humans can rise against us, perhaps others will too. Perhaps our shadow will vanish." The leader struck his claw against the wall, sparks flying, his voice sharp enough. "We are not finished yet." But even he knew his words carried less weight than before. The captured assassin in his cell closed his eyes. Visions of human soldiers burned into his memory, men and women rising with torn flesh, walking with half their organs, fighting with broken bones. He had been raised to believe all prey dies, all prey surrenders. But now he knew one truth: humans were not prey, humans were the storm. And so fear grew stronger, not in human hearts, but in alien ones. The galaxy began to turn the balance, shifting as shadows cracked and light entered where none had been before. The assassins had built their empire on certainty, but humans had shattered it with survival, with defiance, with truth. The galaxy stood on the edge of change as whispers of human survival spread across stars. The assassins who once ruled in darkness now faced the light of truth, and that truth was heavier than any blade. Every story of a human living through wounds that should have killed became a weapon sharper than steel. The fear that once chained others to silence began to weaken link by link until hope started to rise. On Earth, leaders gathered inside a great hall filled with voices strong and united. Generals, doctors, and soldiers all stood together, each one scarred, each one marked by battles they should have lost but had endured. They spoke of what came next, and they spoke with fire. One general declared, "The assassins thought they could break us with shadows, but they were wrong now. We bring them into the light." Another shouted, "No more hiding, no more fear. We will carry the fight to their strongholds until they have no place left to run." Ships were prepared in silence, engines glowing, weapons ready. Every soldier who stepped aboard carried scars, some hidden, some clear, but each scar was a badge of proof that they had survived what should have ended them, proof that humanity could not be silenced. The fleet rose from Earth, cutting through the black void like burning arrows, their path set for the heart of the assassins. On the assassin vessel, the leader sat in silence, his silver eyes dim. Once he had spoken with fire, once his voice had ruled every assassin. Now his words felt weaker, every order met with doubt. He remembered the captured assassin who had returned broken with tales of humans who would not fall. He clenched his claws and whispered, "They are only flesh, they must break, they must." Yet even he felt the shadow of fear. As the human fleet advanced, they spread messages across every channel, not of threats, but of truth, voices carried into space, saying, "We are human, we live. Even when our bodies break, we fight. Even when our blood spills, we rise again and again until the end comes, and still we rise. The words reached every race. Some trembled, some cheered, some for the first time believed the assassins could be defeated. The assassins prepared their weapons, black ships, forming lines, their blades hidden in shadows. Yet when they looked upon the human fleet, they saw something they had never faced before: soldiers who knew they might die, yet smiled; soldiers who carried wounds, yet marched; soldiers who bore the weight of death, yet stood tall. The assassins struck first, sending waves of fire across the void, but the humans endured, shields breaking, hulls burning, yet ships kept moving forward like storms that refused to fade. Inside one ship, a young soldier with a missing lung held his weapon tight. Breathing heavy yet steady beside him stood another with one eye gone, and another with scars across his chest. They fought together without pause, every step a promise that no wound could stop them. Their voices echoed through the halls, not of fear, but of defiance, shouting, "We endure, we endure." The assassins boarded some human ships, their claws flashing, their blades cutting, yet even as human blood spilled, the fight did not end. Soldiers rose. Even with wounds that should have ended them, they fought with one arm, they fought with broken ribs, they fought with breath shallow but strong, and the assassins who struck them began to tremble, because no prey had ever fought like this, no prey had ever refused to fall. The leader of the assassins watched from his throne of steel, his hands shaking, his eyes wide, as he saw reports of his warriors failing, not because their blades missed, failing not because their poisons weakened, failing because the humans refused to die. He rose with a roar, demanding more, demanding fury, demanding the storm of shadow. But the shadow itself had begun to fade. The humans pressed forward, their fleet pushing through the dark walls of assassin space. One by one, assassin ships burned, one by one stations fell, human voices echoing through the void. Each victory a blow not just to steel, but to the very heart of fear that had ruled the galaxy for ages. The captured assassin, still chained on the human vessel, heard the news through whispers of guards. He lowered his head in silence, and finally spoke words that tasted bitter. "We were hunters, we were shadows, we were death itself. But you humans are something else. You are storms that cannot be chained. You are fire that refuses to fade. You are death to the killers." On the final day, the human fleet reached the core world of the assassins, a planet wrapped in dark clouds, mountains carved into fortresses, rivers flowing with metal walls rising like teeth. It was the heart of terror, the throne of the assassins. But now it faced fire from beyond the sky. Human ships circled above, ready to strike. Soldiers stood ready to fall, yet none feared, because each one carried the truth in their hearts. The leader of the assassins stood upon his fortress walls, claws sharp, voice shaking. He cried to his warriors, "Fight, fight," until the last breath. But deep in his heart, he knew breath would not last. His silver eyes looked to the sky and saw the human fleet descending, unstoppable, unyielding, unbroken. He whispered curses, yet the words held no weight. The humans struck with fire and steel. They landed upon the dark mountains. They tore through the fortress walls. They fought in halls where shadows once ruled. Every wound they carried became a banner of strength. Every scar became a story shouted into the face of the assassins, until even the strongest of them began to break. In the final chamber, the human general stood before the assassin leader, both scarred, both weary, yet only one still held fire in his eyes. The general raised his voice for all to hear. "We are human, and we are not prey. We are not shadows. We are not fragile. We are storms. We are fire. We are the end of your terror." The leader raised his claws for one last strike, but his hand trembled, his eyes wide, as he saw not just one human, but many standing behind the general, each marked with wounds, yet still alive, still burning with will. He lowered his claws, his voice broken, whispering, "Then it is over." And so the war of shadows ended, not with silence, but with voices loud across the galaxy. Humans had proven what no blade could cut, what no poison could end, what no shadow could cover. They had proven that survival itself was their weapon, that endurance was their victory, that even death must fight for every step against them. The assassins who once ruled with fear now stood broken. Their empire shattered, their name a memory, and the galaxy turned its eyes to humanity, no longer as prey, no longer as fragile, but as a force that rose against death itself and won.